In a quiet countryside, there lived a farmer named Sam. He loved his barn, a century-old structure that held memories of countless harvests and family gatherings. But trouble was brewing in the form of Karen, the new HOA president, who had a reputation for being overbearing and controlling. One sunny afternoon, Sam returned from the fields to find Karen's shiny new Bentley parked right in front of his barn door. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a blatant disregard for his property and the farming life he cherished. Frustrated, he honked his horn, but Karen simply waved him off, showing no intention of moving her car. Sam tried to reason with her. "Karen, I need to get into my barn. Can you please move your car?" But Karen, arms crossed and a smirk on her face, replied, "I'm just here for a quick visit. Your barn can wait." After several minutes of waiting, Sam's patience wore thin. He had crops to tend to and livestock to care for. In a moment of impulsive decision-making, he climbed into his trusty old tractor. As he approached the Bentley, Sam felt a mix of anger and determination. He knew it was a drastic move, but he felt pushed to the edge. With a swift motion, he maneuvered the tractor closer, and with a loud crunch, the front tire ran over the sleek vehicle. The sound of breaking glass and crumpling metal echoed. Karen's eyes widened, and she rushed out of the barn, screaming in disbelief. "What have you done?" Sam stepped down from the tractor, his heart racing. "You blocked my barn door, Karen. I need to get to my work. This isn't just about you." The commotion drew the attention of neighbors, many of whom had been silently watching the escalating feud. Some were shocked, while others were amused by the spectacle unfolding before them. Karen, furious and indignant, threatened to call the police, but Sam stood his ground. "You can call them, but I'll explain why I did it. You've been a nuisance to everyone around here, and your actions have consequences. Blocking someone's access isn't just rude, it's disrespectful." As the police arrived, Sam calmly explained the situation. The officers listened carefully, noting that Karen had repeatedly disregarded community guidelines. They ultimately sided with Sam, emphasizing the importance of neighborly respect. In the end, the community rallied behind Sam. They recognized the need for balance between personal property rights and communal living. Karen, realizing her overreach had backfired, eventually agreed to a community meeting to discuss the role of the HOA and how to foster better relationships among neighbors. From that day forward, the neighborhood began to change. They established open lines of communication, ensuring everyone felt heard and respected. The tractor incident became a legendary story, symbolizing the fight for fairness and the power of standing up for oneself. Sam continued to thrive on his farm, now with a stronger sense of community around him. And as for Karen, she learned that being a good neighbor was far more valuable than any luxury car could provide. As time passed, the community meeting organized by Karen became a turning point. Attended by residents from all walks of life, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Sam, armed with his experiences and the support of his neighbors, prepared to speak. During the meeting, residents shared their frustrations about Karen's overbearing rules and her tendency to impose unnecessary restrictions. Sam stood up, recounting the Bentley incident with humor and seriousness. "We're all here to live peacefully," he said, "but that means respecting each other's space and property." Karen, initially defensive, began to see the bigger picture. She realized that her intentions to improve the neighborhood had spiraled into a series of conflicts. The more she listened, the more she understood the importance of balance and compromise. As discussions unfolded, new ideas emerged. The community decided to form a neighborhood committee, where every voice could be heard regarding HOA decisions. They established guidelines that promoted cooperation rather than control. In the weeks that followed, Sam took on a leadership role in the committee. He proposed community events, such as a harvest festival and a monthly potluck, to foster connections among neighbors. Karen, eager to redeem herself, volunteered to help organize these events, realizing that building relationships was more rewarding than exerting authority. The first potluck was a huge success. Everyone brought a dish, and laughter filled the air as neighbors shared stories and enjoyed each other's company. Sam showcased his farm's produce, and Karen even brought her famous apple pie, which surprisingly became a crowd favorite. With each event, the atmosphere shifted. Residents began to collaborate on projects, like community gardens and shared resources for lawn care. Sam and Karen even teamed up to create a welcome wagon for new residents, ensuring they felt included from the start. One day, while working in his fields, Sam noticed Karen approaching with a bright smile. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how we can make our neighborhood even better. What if we start a mentorship program for kids interested in farming?" Inspired, Sam agreed. Together, they organized workshops where children from the neighborhood could learn about agriculture, sustainability, and the importance of community. This initiative not only educated the younger generation, but also strengthened bonds among families. As the seasons changed, so did the dynamics of the neighborhood. What had once been a place of tension transformed into a vibrant community. Sam felt a sense of pride not just in his farm, but in the friendships he had cultivated. Months later, the annual Harvest Festival arrived, and it was bigger and better than ever. With games, rides, and a showcase of local talent, it became a cherished tradition. The centerpiece was a giant banner that read, "Unity in Community." During the festival, Sam received an unexpected award from the neighborhood committee for his contributions to fostering community spirit. Karen presented it with heartfelt sincerity, acknowledging how far they had come together. The two stood side by side, sharing a laugh as they reminisced about the Bentley incident. "Who knew a crushed car could lead to such good things?" Sam joked, and the crowd erupted in laughter. As the sun set over the festival, Sam felt grateful. He had not only fought for his right to his barn, but had also helped reshape his community into a place of understanding, collaboration, and friendship. From that day forward, the neighborhood thrived, proving that sometimes a little conflict could lead to the most beautiful transformations. And as for Karen, she learned that true leadership wasn't about authority. It was about listening, learning, and growing together. My farm, a sprawling 100-acre sanctuary, was my world. At its heart stood my massive old red barn, where I housed my tractors and harvesting equipment. Though my property bordered the fancy Kensington Street housing development, the deeds were crystal clear. The land was mine. The problem was that the new residents, particularly Brittany Galore, who we all privately called HOA Karen, had decided to simply ignore the rural reality of their surroundings. Brittany embodied every HOA Karen stereotype, overly rigid about rules that applied only to others, and viewing every issue as a matter of lifestyle. Her prized possession was a shiny, new Bentley Continental GT, white, with gold rims, a screaming symbol of her status. The big lockdown, it was a sweltering summer morning, and I had a major delivery of corn to get to the city market. For this, I needed my biggest machine, the mighty John Deere 8400 tractor. I went to slide open the massive barn door and froze. Parked directly in front of my barn door, as if it were on display in a luxury showroom, was Brittany's new white Bentley. The rest of the drive was empty, but she had positioned her car right in the middle, completely blocking the clearance needed for the tractor or anything else to get out. Brittany was standing on her lawn, talking loudly on her iPhone with a smug, triumphant smile on her face. "Brittany," I called out, "move your car. I need to get the tractor out. My delivery is time-sensitive." She pulled the phone from her ear and said casually, "Oh, hello, the Crusher." She had nicknamed me that because of my tractor's size. I thought I'd park here for a bit. "You kick up too much dirt, and it's ruining the finish on my new paint. It'll just be for a little while." "I gave you notice yesterday that I needed to be out this morning," I said, struggling to keep the anger out of my voice. "If you don't move it now, I'm going to move it myself." Brittany laughed loudly. "You? How are you going to move my Bentley? Do you know what this car costs? One scratch and I'll sue you for the entire farm." "You wouldn't dare." "Go ahead, call the cops, Crusher." She shrugged and went back to her phone call. Tractor versus luxury. Sedan, I glanced at my watch. I didn't have time for this drama. The corn could spoil, and when it comes to my property rights and business, I don't negotiate with obstructionists. I walked silently back into the barn. Moments later, the whole area vibrated to the roar of the John Deere 8400's 300-horsepower diesel engine. I engaged the front loader, the massive reinforced scoop designed to move tons of earth, raising it slightly to clear her decorative lawn lights. I drove the tractor slowly out of the barn door. Brittany was still on her phone, but when she heard the deafening growl and saw the terrifying shadow of the tractor looming behind her, she spun around. The smugness in her eyes instantly turned to horror. "What are you doing?" she shrieked. I eased the tractor up to the rear bumper of the Bentley, positioning the loader bucket precisely over the trunk. I didn't accelerate or slam into it. I simply did what I had to do to clear the way. I lowered the loader slightly and applied slow, steady pressure. Prune! The sleek, expensive trunk and roof of the Italian car folded up like tinfoil. The tractor lifted the Bentley, shoved it sideways out of the path of the barn door, and deposited it on the grass, a crumpled heap of twisted metal and blown-out airbags. Brittany's phone clattered to the ground. "My Bentley! You maniac! What have you done?" I stopped the tractor, leaned out the window, and calmly pulled off my work gloves. "I did what you dared me to do, Brittany," I said, my voice flat. "I have a commercial timeline. Your property does not get to obstruct my access." The police arrived, and just as Brittany had suggested, I told them exactly what happened. They looked at my property deeds, then at the mangled Bentley, and then at Brittany, who was now hysterically demanding my arrest. In the end, the police issued Brittany a citation for illegal parking and obstruction of business and informed her it was a purely civil matter. I had the right to clear an obstruction preventing commercial operation on my land. My corn truck was on its way to the city, and the barn door was clear. Brittany's reign of Bentley terror over my farm had come to a crushing end. What do you think Brittany told the HOA board when she had to explain why her car now looked like a crushed soda can? The destruction of the Bentley was a civil matter, but its reverberations were definitely communal. The following week, the HOA board convened an emergency hearing, ostensibly to address the incident of unauthorized vehicle removal, but unofficially to put me, Ethan Morgan, the farmer, on trial. The meeting room was packed. On one side sat Brittany, draped in black, her neck brace perhaps a little dramatic, holding a stack of glossy printouts showing the pristine pre-crushed state of her $300,000 car. Next to her was her lawyer, who looked like he usually handled mergers, not crushed luxury vehicles. On the other side, I sat alone, wearing my usual clean jeans and a plain work shirt, feeling the collective glare of every homeowner who saw me as the unrefined element, lowering their property values. Brittany's plea brittier started, her voice trembling, a performance worthy of an Emmy. Mr. Morgan committed an act of domestic terrorism. He intentionally and maliciously used an instrument of agricultural warfare, his monstrous tractor, to destroy my personal property. He could have called a tow truck. He could have waited. But he chose violence. Her lawyer jumped in, emphasizing the cost. The replacement value of the vehicle alone is astronomical. But beyond that, my client suffered emotional trauma. She was physically threatened by the sheer unbridled aggression of a machine aimed directly at her person. The HOA president, a meek man named Gary, turned to me with dread. "Mr. Morgan, the board understands your frustration, but was the crushing entirely necessary? Couldn't you have just gently pushed it with the blade?" The farmer's defense, I stood up slowly, not raising my voice, but projecting an authority that silenced the room more effectively than Brittany's theatrics. "Gary, members of the board, let's stick to the facts and the bylaws. Fact 1, my red barn is a commercial operation. It is not a garage. Fact 2, the access road is a registered ingress/egress for commercial farm vehicles with the county, a detail disclosed in every single HOA disclosure packet." I pulled out a small laminated diagram. It wasn't about the Bentley's value. It was about the law of the land. "Here is a diagram of the space required to safely turn the John Deere 8400, I continued, pointing to a large yellow circle. Brittany's car was parked directly within the minimum safe turning radius. The law states that a vehicle obstructing an active commercial driveway can be removed by the property owner to prevent business interruption. I looked directly at Brittany. She was given verbal warning. She explicitly told me to call the police and dared me to move it. My tractor is not a tow truck. The only way the Bentley could be moved, without causing further delay that risked my crop delivery, was to use the equipment I already had engaged. The tractor moved the obstruction. That the obstruction was fragile is a matter between Mrs. Galore and her insurance company. Not this board. The rule change, fails Brittany's lawyer then played his final card. We moved to immediately adopt a new bylaw restricting the size and type of vehicles permitted on any residential adjacent property, specifically prohibiting tractors over 200 horsepower within 500 feet of a dwelling. That was the line. I smiled calmly. "You are welcome to pass any rule you like, provided it is legal," I said, pulling out a printout of the state's Right to Farm Act. This state, and the county, has a Right to Farm Act. This act protects established farming operations from nuisance ordinances passed by later developing residential areas. Any attempt by this HOA to restrict the commercial equipment necessary for my established farm operations will result in an immediate, federally backed injunction against the HOA. The lawyer visibly deflated. The board members exchanged nervous glances. They knew suing a simple farmer was risky. Suing a farmer protected by state law was suicide for their legal budget. Gary cleared his throat. "Well, given the, complexities of state commercial law, and the fact that Mr. Morgan's actions were technically within his right to clear an obstruction." The motion to censure me died instantly. Brittany stood up, furious and defeated. "This is unacceptable. You let a barbarian destroy my property." I picked up my hat. "My property is fine, Brittany. Yours, however, has a very expensive lesson attached to it." The ultimate payback, Brittany, however, was not done. A few days later, a massive sign appeared at the edge of my property, facing the main HOA road. It was professionally printed, complete with a cartoon of a giant tractor crushing a tiny white car. It read, "Warning, stay away! This property owner is a dangerous tractor-wielding lunatic." It was harassment, pure and simple, but also technically free speech. I ignored it. Instead, I waited until the next HOA meeting. The day before, I had the gravel lot next to my red barn paved. Then, using my biggest farm equipment, I erected a magnificent custom-made structure. At the HOA meeting, I distributed a new flyer. It was a beautiful, glossy photo of the new structure.